We all have that one thing that can only be described as our jam. For me, it's completing games. But there are distinctions within that. For all the games I've completed over the years, there are few that are more satisfying to complete than Star Fox 64, because this game is truly my jam. I freaking love this game. It's the unsung hero of the N64 era. It's also wildly original, even though it's technically a remake. This game still holds the hell up because the gameplay is insanely tight and it leaves its secrets up to the player to find. So strap into your Arwing, do a barrel roll, and consider leaving Slippy to fend for himself for once, as I recomplete Star Fox 64.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another new episode of New Game Plus, where I am recompleting the first 120 episodes of The Completionist. More on that in the description box down below. And hey, while you're down there, you can actually pick up a Frog in a Car plushie. Go to froginthecar.com or click the URL links to Shopify down beneath this video. Guys, I'll keep it short and sweet. Star Fox 64 was my first N64 game that I bought with my own money. It's probably one of the best things that I am best at in general. Star Fox 64 is my jam. I'm good at other things other than platformers, you know. I'm even good at RPGs and wait, hold on a second. Hello?
Damn it.
Yes, Rob. I'm on my way.
Good luck.
Star Fox 64 was a big dang deal for me. Before hype was a thing, before I started even making completionist videos, before I even really knew who I was, I knew I would become an expert on this game. Now, this isn't the first game I've ever completed, but it's probably the first game I achieved high-level mastery of. One of the reasons I wanted to recomplete this game is because this is the Star Fox that Nintendo absolutely nailed. Ever since 1997, Nintendo has been trying to recapture the success of this game. Quick sidebar, the original episode for this game never aired on my YouTube channel originally. 2011 and 2012 were super weird years for me, so even though there was a remastered version of this game for the Nintendo 3DS, I am recompleting the original N64 game, which is fine, because this is the version that is closest to my heart. And if you ever want to see two grown men absolutely gush over Star Fox 64, you can check out Alex and myself's playthrough over on Super Beard Bros. And this was the first Let's Play we ever did on the channel. Much like this game, those episodes hold up real well.
If there was a Star Fox world record competition, I think that's the one game that I would go to, like, train for, because I feel like I'm right there.
Watch what you say. This is YouTube. You don't know what kind of...
Maybe it's out there.
You might have to do a very horrible episode of The Completionist.
The plot is straightforward. I loved it then, and I still love it today. The Star Fox team, a ragtag group of badass mercenary pilots, and Slippy, is called into action to defend the Lilat system against giant floating monkey head Andross. Now, in the past, Andross was exiled to planet Venom, but ever since then, he's been gathering power and plotting his revenge. For Fox, it's personal, as Andross is responsible for the death of his father, James McCloud. After a call to action by General Pepper, Fox and friends make their way across the Lilat system to stop Andross once and for all. Now, this game came out pretty early on in the N64's lifespan, and it's essentially a remake of Star Fox for the SNES. For a game from 1997, the action is still as crisp and pointed as the Arwing's wings. I said that this game looked good for its age in my original video, and I'm going to go ahead and say I agree with myself again, because I still think it does. Star Fox 64 is still the golden child of the Star Fox franchise, being hands down the best-selling Star Fox game to date. No other Star Fox game really came close to the success of this one. One of the things I greatly enjoyed about this game back then was definitely the Rumble Pack. And honestly, it's probably one of the keys to this game's success. Even though it was just an accessory, the Rumble Pack was an undeniable part of this game's appeal, and still is to this day. Probably 80% of this game is an on-rails shooter, with the rest being devoted to the incredible at the time all-range mode, where Fox can engage in ship-on-ship dogfighting in a 3D arena. I praised the game's simple approach to upgrades then, and I appreciate it even further. It's just jump in and go. Turns out, all that's needed is pure piloting skill. Well, that and paying close attention to different cues. There are 15 levels in this game, but it isn't as simple as beating each stage one after the other. How well you perform in each level determines the availability of certain stages, creating different routes to the end. All roads eventually lead to Venom and Andross, but the route to get there is half the fun. It takes a lot of playthroughs to complete this game, but honestly, I've been completing Star Fox 64 since I was a kid, so to complete it again is hardly a chore. In fact, I probably complete this game once a year, kind of like a skill check if you will, and every time, it's always a pleasure. Paying tribute to what came before can be an art form. Star Fox 64 proves it. Even though it's a remake of an SNES game and uses ideas from a cancelled sequel, Star Fox 64 emerges as wholly its own thing. As a result, it's one of the most memorable and fun completion experiences on the N64. At its core, Star Fox 64 is peak Nintendo, a game that keeps on giving. There are several references in Star Fox 64 that feel like loving tributes. The opening crawl feels like a direct nod to Star Wars. Even the evil Pigma's last name, Dengar, is like a bounty hunter. I always felt that the Katina level was like a micro version of Independence Day, though I doubt the movie was a direct inspiration. I love how Nintendo created its own sci-fi universe. It's one of the many things that helps this game stand out.
In fact, even the way the character portraits move is a reference to one of Shigeru Miyamoto's influences, a British puppet show from the 1960s called Thunderbirds. Miyamoto even wanted the Star Fox characters to be licensed out to make a Thunderbird-style puppet action show. It never happened, but that would have been sweet.
Hey Fox, do a barrel roll.
I've always loved that Miyamoto is so open about his influences for game design, but Star Fox 64 has yet another big influence, its own history. In my first video, I noted that this game is essentially a full-blown remake and reimagining of the SNES Star Fox, which is good, because if I'm being completely honest, that game is nearly unplayable by today's standards. Star Fox 64 brings in elements that were designed for Star Fox 2, an SNES game that was never officially released until the SNES Classic a few years ago. In an interview from the Star Fox 64 Player's Guide, Miyamoto says that probably 60% came from the original game, 30% from Star Fox 2, and 10% is entirely new. I don't think Miyamoto gives himself enough credit there, because iteration on what came before is a key part of the artistic choice. You'd think that Star Fox 64 pretty much being a giant remake would make it feel less original, but you'd be wrong. This game has plenty of juice on its own. In my first video, I thought the story was simplistic and fun, but it also has a lot of nuance that I appreciate even more now. The plot gives players just enough to go off of to keep things interesting. What's the real beef between Wolf and Fox? I still couldn't tell you all the specifics, because the game doesn't provide much info besides a few snarky quips between the characters. On the other side of the coin, the story does flesh out a few key characters like Peppy and Pigma, so it feels like there are real stakes at times. Star Fox 64 finds the balance of how much to reveal about the characters, and it feels really cool. The plot does something I wish that more games would do. It lays out a little background for the characters, but also lets the imagination of the player fill in a lot of the gaps. Now, I said in my first video that the Rumble Pack provides a level of immersion that was unseen in video games up to that point. This was the first game that I ever owned for the N64 that I even purchased with my own money, and the Rumble Pack was bundled in with the game when I first got it. I think it's another reason why I wanted to complete this version rather than the 3DS remake. 3D is cool, but it's just not as cool as having a gigantic Rumble Pack in your controller. It's one of the many things that makes Star Fox 64 so iconic. To me, it still holds up as one of the most absolute satisfying games to complete for the N64. And this is the same system that basically invented the 3D platformer collectathon, so that's saying something. I think it's still incredible how progression works in this game. Every stage is so well designed and packed full of subtle cues to clue players into secret objectives. The game gives players all the tools they need to figure out how to accomplish a mission. I've said it before that because the game is the perfect length, I never felt annoyed at having to replay levels to find all the secrets, and that's still true. Even the final level, Venom, plays out differently depending on what missions you played out to get there. There's an earnest quality to this game's tone that is vintage 90s Nintendo. I've always thought that everything is iconic, and I think that earnestness is why. There's a reason I have basically the entire script memorized. In my first video, I felt that the voice acting created a more intimate feeling of the characters talking directly to you, and I still feel that way. Nintendo fans will understand that there are almost always secret objectives in games. I love that this game doesn't spell things out for the player when trying to earn badges or find secret exits. It's simple to look up requirements now, but one of my favorite things from completing this game the first time in my life is that I didn't know how to find badges or that they even existed. I discovered them a stage at a time, often by accident, after replaying the same levels over and over again. I still love that the Arwing is basically fully formed from the start. There are some upgrades to give it more powerful lasers and bombs to stockpile, but that's it. Players don't have to configure or improve the Arwing, just master what it can do. The boost, the break, the somersaults, and of course the barrel roll. Mastering all of the Arwing's maneuvers is key to completing this game. It's a tribute to this game's design that it's never boring. Every stage has an awesome hook or boss fight. When you're going for completion in an arcadey game like this, variety keeps things interesting. The Landmaster stages are some of the best this game has to offer because it changes up the feel of the game so completely, yet still feels completely in line with the universe. This also allows for more gameplay variation to find secret exits, like putting in the warp zones in Medio or Sector X, perhaps blasting switches in Macbeth to make the train switch tracks. I only wish there was more Blue Marine stages because that sub is so freaking awesome to play in.
In fact, the developers had planned for there to be as many Blue Marine stages as any other stage, but had a lot of trouble because of how graphically complex the underwater level was. Falco's line about everything falling apart is even a slyly cynical reference to how the developers were having trouble getting the underwater stages to work how they wanted them to.
So in my first video of this game, I felt that completing it didn't feel like work at all. It's just way too much fun. And I still feel that way, maybe even more so now. And my appreciation of Star Fox 64 grows every time I pick it back up. I know the routes I need to go to, I know the kills I need to hit for the badges, I even know what sides of the screen enemies are going to appear on. And yet, there is a challenge in the execution. Each stage has a secret number of kills that determine if players can earn a medal. If you hit that number and all 3 members of the team survive the stage, you'll earn a badge that shows up on the stage on the level select screen. Earn a badge for every stage, and expert mode is unlocked. In expert mode, you can earn medals on every stage once again, but the enemies hit harder and there are more of them than ever before. And now the Arwing itself is even more fragile. I'll always have a little trouble in Sector Z though, on both normal and expert runs. It's one of the most difficult to earn badges on. Constantly juggling keeping my allies alive and racking up my score is always difficult. There's also the final level Venom. Depending on what route you take, you'll approach the planet completely different. I always prefer the Star Wolf way because taking down Star Fox's rivals is always incredibly satisfying. With a game like this, it's easy to mess up a perfect run. Luckily, it never feels like I'm wasting my time because this game is pretty short overall. Even someone who's only moderately good at this game can make it to Venom in probably about 20 to 25 minutes. So to hit every single level doesn't take all that long, especially once you start to intuitively picking up what needs to be done to see that beautiful mission accomplished screen at the end of every stage. In terms of medaling every stage on expert mode, the best advice I can offer is to not lose your cool. The kill count remains the same to get badges, you just have less room for error. But again, by the time you've unlocked this, I have faith that you're already more than ready to handle the challenge. You can't slack off, but this is nothing that Fox and his crew can't handle. Another way Fox helped me keep his cool in expert mode is that he wears those awesome shades like his dad, putting him just one wrong move away from the danger zone. Everything I love about Star Fox 64 can be summed up in the first level, Corneria. If I ever need an ego boost, I'll play through the stage because I can destroy it every single time. It's my favorite stage in the game, and a great example of all of the new ideas that Nintendo brings to the table. In the player's guide, Miyamoto says that the first 30 minutes of a game are the most important, and that he wanted to make sure the game was exciting right out of the gate. And I think Nintendo totally succeeds with that philosophy right here. Star Fox 64 is a once-in-a-generation game. To this day, there hasn't been a Star Fox with the same level of base satisfaction that saturates this game. It's satisfying all the way through, and that includes the completion bonuses. The best thing about completing Star Fox 64 is that the more badges you earn and secret routes you find, the better you naturally become at the game. So by the time you earn every badge by racking up high scores and mastering every quirk of every stage, you are more than ready to tackle the unlockable expert mode. Star Fox 64 rewards mastery with the ultimate test, and overcoming that test is more satisfying than Falco giving you a compliment.
Okay, I'll admit it. You did good, Fox.
The completion bonuses I earned in Star Fox 64 are totally worth it. Even though most of them are multiplayer related, they still feel like worthy rewards. The sense of accomplishment is still there, even after completing this game so many times. Rewards are tied to badges. Earning a badge on Venom on normal difficulty unlocks the Landmaster in multiplayer, which is undeniably cool and leads to some chaotically awesome multiplayer battles. At this point, completing this game is like comfort food to me. There's something incredibly satisfying about looking over the level select screen and seeing every little planet dotted with a medal that shows I mastered it. It feels freaking good. On top of that, there's even more multiplayer content unlocked once you earn every medal in expert mode. Finally, my friends and I can play multiplayer mode with the pilots themselves running around on foot, shooting each other with laser bazookas. In my first video, I mentioned that these rewards feel satisfying because the N64 was a pioneer in multiplayer with 4-player split screen. And that's still true, though I find myself playing much less multiplayer offline these days. Thanks, pandemic. I feel similarly about the sound test that's revealed after unlocking expert mode. I'm not very likely to haul out my N64 and load up my perfect file just to hear this game's soundtrack, as awesome as it still is, but it still feels like an accomplishment. There's one last flex that I've noticed is kind of a staple with Nintendo games sometimes. Earning every badge on normal mode and expert mode not only unlocks everything in multiplayer and reveals the sound test, it also changes the start screen so that anybody coming over to my house can see just by turning on the game that I have completed it. And if that isn't a nice brag to your friends, I don't know what is. When I re-completed Star Fox 64, there were 15 levels where I earned badges twice, once on normal, once on expert. 6 full playthroughs to hit every route. Something like 10,000 total enemies shot down on my campaigns. 4.5 hours of total playtime. And one majestic frog who, even though he holds the title of all-time most annoying video game character, I would still hop in my Landmaster and rescue without a second thought.
Star Fox 64 is a stone cold classic. Everything about it is iconic. The voice acting, the polygon graphics, the tight gameplay, the multiple routes. It's Nintendo at the top of their game, and the game just keeps on giving. With secret routes to discover, badges to earn, it's a nostalgic masterpiece, even to this day. And if you're not a big fan of multiplayer modes, the sense of accomplishment that I got from seeing all those badges is unmatched. The game also shows that good ideas take time to develop, and sometimes that resonates across multiple systems, multiple times, to the point this game is so good, it's been remade several times. So, with that in mind, guys, I still give this game my completionist rating of complete it.
Complete it!